My name is Hannah Mitchell, and until not long ago, I believed I understood life. But the truth is, I couldn't have been more wrong. I've always been a practical person. I believed in God, of course, but never felt the need to deepen my faith. I thought that being a good person was enough, that God looks at the heart, and that was sufficient. Nathan, my husband, saw everything in a very different light. He didn't just believe in God. He lived for Him. He would spend hours reading the Bible, seeking answers, praying with an intensity I never understood. "Hannah, have you ever wondered what happens to the soul right after death?" he asked me one night as we lay in bed. "Nathan, why think about that?" I rolled my eyes. "Life is complicated enough, don't you think?" He smiled, but I noticed a glimmer of concern in his eye. "Because it's not something distant, Hannah. It can happen at any moment." I laughed, shaking my head. "You talk as if you know the day you're going to die." He sighed and turned to his side. "I just wish you could see what I see." That night, I didn't pay much attention to his words. I always loved Nathan, but I never shared his urgency about eternity. For me, life was meant to be lived in the present. I liked planning for the future, making travel plans, thinking about the next step in my career. Nathan never worried about any of that. He would say that our home wasn't here, and even without realizing it, this created a distance between us. We didn't argue about it, but there was something that separated us. He lived with his eyes on the sky, and I lived with my feet on the ground. But then, the day of the accident came. It was an ordinary morning like any other. We hit the road to visit some friends in another city. The sun was reflecting off the wet pavement from the night's rain, and Nathan was driving calmly. "Don't you think we should deepen our faith?" he suddenly asked, without taking his eyes off the road. "Nathan," I sighed, "we already go to church. We already believe in God. What more do we need?" He squeezed my hand gently. "You still don't understand, but one day you will." I smiled, not taking it too seriously. I had no idea that this would be the conversation we would have. Then, everything happened. It was quick, a flash, the deafening sound of the impact, the car spinning as if it were made of paper, the seatbelt holding me in place, the pressure in my chest, Nathan's scream, and then silence. For a moment, everything went dark, and when I opened my eyes again, I was no longer inside the car. In that moment, I realized that death was not the end. It was just the beginning. The impact was so violent that there was no time to feel pain, fear, or even understand what was happening. The world around me dissolved into a whirlwind of light and shadow, a moment that lasted an eternity. Then, everything stopped. The silence was absolute, a deep, cold emptiness, as if time had frozen around me. I was no longer in the car. The first thing I noticed was the lightness, as if I no longer had weight, no longer had a body. I didn't feel the ground beneath my feet. But I wasn't falling either. When I looked around, the scene hit me like a blow to the chest. I was above the road floating, looking down, and then I saw myself. My body was there, inside the car, motionless. Nathan was beside me, his face turned toward me, but something about him was different. There was a glow around him, something subtle, but it made me understand without anyone needing to say anything. Nathan was no longer there. Despair rose in my throat like a choked scream. I wanted to run to him, but how? It was then that I felt something beside me. I turned slowly, and Nathan was there with me, but not as before. He was at peace. His face bore no fear or pain. He looked at his own body like someone observing a page of a book they had already finished reading. Nathan turned his face to me, smiling softly. "We died." It wasn't a question. It came out of my mouth before I could think. I wanted to deny it, wanted to believe it was a dream, But then something shifted around us. The scenery began to transform. Time seemed to slow down. The colors lost their intensity, as if the physical world was dissolving and something greater was taking its place. And then the light appeared. It was unlike any light I had ever seen on earth. It didn't hurt the eyes, but pierced through my soul. It was warm, welcoming, and at the same time, filled with an authority that made my whole being tremble. Nathan stepped forward, as if he recognized that light even before he could see it fully. And then the voice came, soft yet so powerful it seemed to sustain all existence around us. My heart raced. I was before him. Nathan was the first to walk toward the light, but when I tried to follow him, I felt something different. His body shone brighter than mine. There was something in him that I did not possess. "Nathan," my voice came out weak. He looked at me and reached out his hand. "Come with me." But before I could touch him, I felt an invisible force holding me back. The light around us expanded, and suddenly the physical world vanished completely. We were now in another place, and I knew that this was just the beginning. The light surrounding us was not just a glow, it was a presence. I felt as if I was being enveloped by something greater than anything I had ever known. It was warmth without burning, clarity without effort. And then I saw him. Jesus was before us. His eyes were not just eyes. They were deep, as if they contained the very universe. He did not need to speak for me to understand. His presence said it all. Nathan, at my side, seemed to understand immediately. His body shone brighter than mine, as if he was already ready for this moment. He stepped forward, and I instinctively tried to follow him, but something held me back. The barrier was invisible but real, as if I still could not pass through where he was going. Jesus looked at me with tenderness. There was no condemnation in his gaze, only wisdom. "Hannah, you need to see." And then everything around us changed. The sky opened before us, and I saw something my mind could never imagine. It was like an immense city, but alive. The buildings seemed made of something that doesn't exist on Earth. They were solid, yet flowed as if they had their own life. There was a glow that did not come from a sun or any visible source, but seemed to emanate from within each thing, from each being. And it was then that I noticed the people. They were not shadows or vague spirits, but completely alive. More alive than anyone I had ever seen on Earth. They moved with purpose. Some laughed, some prayed. They all seemed whole, but there was something even more surprising. They were not all the same. Some shone with intensity, as if they already understood everything. Others had a softer light, as if they were still learning. This is the way for those who have lived. For me, the words of Jesus echoed within me, as if they were etched directly into my soul. I was in front, absorbing everything, but then he stopped and looked back, relieved. But then the barrier between us grew stronger. His path had already been chosen. Yours is still being revealed. Jesus raised his hand. The city before us began to transform. And then the process of the 7 days started to be revealed to me. I was about to witness how each soul traverses this period, and how some still struggle to understand their destiny. The heavenly city before me was so real that my senses desperately tried to comprehend it. But I knew this was no ordinary place. Jesus was by my side, and Nathan continued ahead, growing farther away from me. I wanted to run to him, but the invisible barrier grew stronger with each step he took. Then Jesus raised his hand, and the time around us seemed to fold in on itself, and that was when the process of the 7 days began. Before us, I saw other souls arriving. They seemed bewildered. Some were confused, others at complete peace, as if they knew exactly where they were at each soul's departure from Earth. They go through a time of transition. The first 7 days are a period of understanding, acceptance, and choice. My mind was spinning. Choice? What do you mean? But Lord, aren't there only heaven and hell? Doesn't the soul go straight to its destination? Jesus looked at me patiently, but also with something deep and intense. The separation had already been made, but many souls still do not understand their reality. Some arrive here and immediately accept the truth. Others need time to comprehend. He then showed me what happened with each of them. First, I saw those who were faithful in life, who knew God and lived according to His will. For them, the 7 days were a time of learning and revelation. They now see clearly what the flesh never allowed them to fully perceive. I saw people being welcomed by angels, being taught about eternity, understanding their purpose. Some looked like children, as if they had just been born into a new existence. But then the scene changed. Now I saw other souls. They were not at peace. Some were crying, while others seemed to be searching for something, as if they were waiting for someone or trying to understand where they were. And what about those, Lord? These are the ones who never truly knew me. They lived their lives on earth without caring about eternity. Some believed in me, but never fully surrendered. From now on, they need to understand what they have lost. My heart ached. These souls were in a place of learning, but they carried a burden that the others did not have, and they still have a choice. Jesus sighed, as if he felt the pain of these souls alongside me. The human heart can harden, even here. Then he showed me something even more frightening. Souls that, even in the face of truth, refuse to accept it. I saw some that seemed to close their eyes, resisting the light, refusing to believe they were standing before the answer they had sought their entire lives. Why do they do that? I asked, tears in my eyes. Jesus looked at me, and his expression carried both love and sadness, because faith cannot be imposed. It must be chosen. Even after death, God still allowed souls to understand the truth before their final destiny was sealed. And what happens on the 7th day? Jesus raised his hand, and I saw the answer before my eyes. Those who accepted the truth, who opened their hearts, were enveloped by the light and taken to where Nathan already was. But those who refused slowly drifted away, as if they were getting lost in a dense fog, distancing themselves from the truth forever. I couldn't contain my tears. It was so simple, yet so many souls chose to turn away. Then Jesus looked at me in a way that pierced right through me. Now you understand why I brought you here. I trembled. I understood. And it was at that moment that he revealed my mission. You will return, Hannah. You will tell what you saw. I wanted to refuse. I wanted to say that no one would believe me, but I knew there was no way to ignore this truth. Before I could respond, I felt my body being pulled back. The light around me began to fade. Jesus kept looking at me, but I already knew I was going back. The feeling of being pulled back was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was as if my soul was being sucked into a space too small to contain it. I didn't want to go. My whole being resisted, but something stronger than me was dragging me back, and everything around me began to fade away. The light from Jesus was retreating, and Nathan too. The sky was disappearing, and a biting cold took hold of me. Then, impact hit like falling into a body that didn't feel like mine. A brutal shock, an overwhelming weight. I heard voices, muffled sounds, people talking around me, mechanical noises, beeps. The air felt dense. She is waking up. The intense light made me shut my eyes tightly. My head felt submerged in heavy water, and every part of my body seemed immobile. Then, The pain came. A down-to-earth, real pain, something I hadn't felt in so long that it seemed impossible to bear. I wanted to scream, but my throat was dry. I was back. I blinked several times, trying to adjust to the brightness of the room. I was in a hospital room. The white walls, the machines around me, everything felt like it was coming from a confused dream. I turned my head with difficulty and saw my sister Rachel sitting beside me. The relief on her face was evident, but I soon noticed that there was something more there, a shadow. She held my hand tightly. "You're alive. You're back." My mind was spinning. I wanted to speak. I wanted to tell her everything I had seen, but then the memory hit like a punch to the chest. Nathan, where is he? Rachel lowered her head, squeezing my hand even tighter. The answer was in her eyes, even before she spoke. He didn't make it. Hannah, my breath caught. The pain I felt at that moment was not just emotional. It was as if my soul was being torn from my body once again. I already knew Nathan had died. I saw him crossing into the light, but hearing it out loud from someone made it all feel too real. Tears came, heavy, warm, along with the sadness. Something even greater than what I had seen came over me. What I had known, what I had to do. I sat up, but the pressure in my chest rose and fell in short breaths. Words tumbled in my mind. Rachel, I saw. I saw where Nathan went. I saw heaven. I saw Jesus. She looked at me with a mix of relief and confusion. Hannah, you've been in a coma for 7 days. The doctors said that your brain might have created images to cope with the trauma. I shook my head, desperate. No, it wasn't a dream. It was real. I saw what happens to the soul after death. I saw the process of the 7 days. She took a deep breath, pressing her lips together. Hannah, maybe it's better to wait a bit before talking about this. You need to recover. But how could I wait? How could I stay silent? I saw souls that didn't understand where they were going. I saw those who needed to learn, who still had a chance to grasp the truth. And I saw those who resisted, even then, refusing to accept the light of God. Those souls were still out there. Many of them were still alive, walking the earth, unaware of what awaited them. I need to warn them. Rachel sighed, clearly not knowing what to say. In the following days, my body's recovery was slow, but the real challenge was trying to convey what I had seen. The people around me divided into 2 groups, those who listened to me with interest, and those who simply looked at me with pity. Hannah, you've been through trauma. The brain creates stories to protect us. Maybe it was just a dream. Are you sure it wasn't just your imagination? It was frustrating. I saw the truth. I knew what happened in the first 7 days, but no one wanted to believe me. That's when I realized something even more frightening. It was exactly what Jesus had told me would happen. The greatest weapon against the truth isn't denial, it's indifference. I felt an overwhelming weight in my chest. What if I failed? What if I couldn't share what I had seen? But then I remembered Jesus' words. You will return, Hannah. You will share what you saw. You will warn those who still have time to choose. That was my mission. And I knew that from that moment on, I could never be the same. My body's recovery was much faster than the recovery of my soul. I was alive, but after seeing what I saw, could I really call it living? The doctors were amazed at my sudden improvement, saying it was almost a miracle. But I knew I was no longer the same person who had entered that hospital. In the first days after my discharge, I too returned to my routine. But nothing felt real anymore. I was walking through the streets, seeing people laughing, talking, worrying about such small things, and I wondered, do they know? Do they have any idea what awaits them? I knew what happened in the first 7 days after the death, and it tormented me. How could I just move on? I would sit on the couch and turn on the TV, but the words felt empty. The news, the commercials, the movies, everything seemed meaningless because I knew. I saw Nathan. He was at peace. But how many souls were not? How many were, right now, trapped in that phase, trying to grasp the truth before it was too late? And how many were refusing to accept it, even there? That was the question that kept me awake, until one night I picked up my Bible. Before the accident, I had never been very into reading the Word, but now it felt like it was pulsating in my hands, as if I knew the answers were right there. I wandered aimlessly, seeking something that would confirm what I had seen. And then I stopped at Luke 16:19-31, the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. If they do not hear Moses and the prophets, they will not be persuaded, though one rise from the dead. My eyes filled with tears. That was my answer. I went back to tell, but not everyone would believe, and that was part of the mission. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I just needed to speak. That's how my life changed. I set aside many of the things that were once priorities for me, because now my only priority was to fulfill the mission I had been given. I started sharing my experience with a few people. Some called me crazy, others listened and quickly forgot. But some were touched. I saw tears in the eyes of a young man who had been distant from God. I saw the frightened look of a woman who had never thought about eternity. I saw people who, like I once did, believed in God, but had never really stopped to understand what comes next. And that was enough for me to keep going, because I knew time was running out for many. Today, I live to share this truth, because I have been on the other side, and return to warn that eternity is not an incomprehensible mystery. God gives us the chance to understand, even in the first 7 days after death. But after that time, the decision is final. If you are hearing my story now, time is running out, and the decision you make today could define your eternity. Read Luke 16:19-31 and reflect on the fate of the souls. Now, tell me, if your life were to end today, where would your soul go? Comment here with your thoughts and watch this other video for another revelation about what happens after death.